A very wealthy man and president of the financial firm Kazutaka Hyodo gathers his subordinates to announce his will to build a real underground empire for himself. One of his servants, Tonagawa, assures the future emperor that he will never lack a workforce, as there are plenty of young people on the streets filled with naive hopes. One of these young men is Kaiji Ito, who moves to Tokyo after finishing high school. However, the guy can't seem to find a permanent job, preferring to spend his free time on gambling and entertainment. Despite this, Kaiji desperately wants to get rich, though he works as a cashier in a store. Kaiji is angry at everyone but himself, and one day he vents his frustration on expensive cars, which he believes only swindlers can afford. Immediately, he is apprehended by a group of young people, led by a woman named Indo, who informs him that a few years ago, he unwisely co-signed for a colleague who disappeared, leaving behind a debt that has grown to 2 million yen, and that's not to mention the damage he inflicted on the cars. Kaiji states that he can't repay such a sum. That's when Endo offers him a deal. It turns out there is a gambling cruise on a ship called Hope. If he manages to win, the debt will be fully paid off. When he objects, Endo reminds him of his uselessness to society, that he will never be able to change or make money, and that her offer is his only real chance to start over. Late in the evening, Kaiji boards the ship, where he meets fellow losers who have nothing left to lose. The group is greeted by Tonagawa, who explains that to start the game, each participant must buy 3 stars, each costing 1 million yen. Naturally, they don't have that kind of money, so the company offers them a loan at 1% per minute. If someone wins, the company will not only fully cover their debt, but will also buy the stars back. The players are given 12 cards depicting rock, paper, scissors. When someone wins a round, they receive a star from their opponent. The goal is to use all 12 cards and keep at least 3 stars. This must all be done within 30 minutes. At first, the crowd becomes anxious, as no one wants to take a loan or participate in this game. Moreover, no one understands what will happen to the losers. But Tonagawa calls them trash, who have no rights. So either they win or their lives are worthless. A signal sounds for the game to start, and the people jump into it. The first loser is forcibly dragged into a dark room by security. Kaiji meets a guy named Funai, who offers him a clever plan. If they both play the same cards, it will result in a draw. They won't lose any stars and will quickly get rid of their cards, allowing them to meet the game's conditions and win. Kaiji happily agrees. At first, everything goes as planned, but in the last minute, Funai tricks Kaiji and takes 2 stars from him, leaving him with only 1 star and 1 card. Funai, mocking him, explains how he switched the cards to win and bids the fool goodbye. Kaiji rushes into a fight, but the guards quickly break them apart. The guy looks around and realizes that time is running out, and then Funai announces to everyone that Kaiji's last card is scissors, and now everyone knows how to finish him off. In retaliation, Kaiji announces that the swindler's last card is rock. A fight breaks out. At this moment, Kaiji notices blood on his card and then sees a guy named Ishido who wanted to get rid of his cards so he wouldn't have to play. Meanwhile, Funai suggests shuffling the cards so no one knows what's left. The people agree and turn in their cards for a reshuffle. Funai deals the cards to the players, and Kaiji gets his own bloodstained card back. He refuses to play with Funai, but the confident swindler offers to play for 3 stars at once. Since Kaiji doesn't have that many stars, he teams up with Ishido. Funai plays his card with full confidence that he has won. However, it turns out that Kaiji had figured from the start that the swindler would try to deceive him again. So he took one of Ishido's cards and added blood to it, which helped him win. In a burst of joy, Kaiji explains what he did, unaware that Tonagawa is watching everything through the cameras and listening closely to his words. Funai is sent to the darkroom, while Kaiji and Ishido rush to finish the game, ending in a draw. Time runs out, and just as Kaiji celebrates victory, Ishido finds a card in his pocket that he must have forgotten about. Since they teamed up, it means they both lost. The guys find themselves enslaved deep underground, where hundreds of losers are building a kingdom for the great Hyodo. The working conditions are simply horrible. To prevent anyone from escaping, a microchip is implanted in the slaves' hands, and they are branded. There is no rest, and the food is very basic. The people sleep in small, cramped cells. On the 25th day underground, they receive their first salary, but most of the money is taken to cover their debts. The currency is perika, a local equivalent that only has a value in this place. Kaiji calculates that at this rate, he will only be able to pay off his debt by the end of his life. But when temptations like a cart full of alcohol and tasty food appear, Kaiji can't resist and spends nearly all his money on snacks and a few cans of drinks. Most of the workers do the same, which is how the company keeps them underground, forcing them to live from paycheck to paycheck, not thinking about the next day. One day, a cave-in occurs, and Ishido's injured. Kaiji carries his friend to the infirmary where most patients don't receive treatment because they don't have money. A nurse tells them that the most desperate ones leave to participate in a tournament called the Brave Men's Path. It's a very dangerous game where the winner gains freedom, but the loser loses his life. Kaiji realizes that there is no way out of here. He vents his frustrations at the foreman, but then a volunteer named Sahara is brought into the room, ready to go to the Tournament of the Brave. His comrades applaud him, and Kaiji suddenly announces his decision to go to the tournament as well. Then several people from the brigade, including Ishido, decide to go with him. The players arrive on the roof of a skyscraper where they are greeted by Tonegawa, who explains that each player receives a check for 10 million yen, but they can only cash it in a building across the street, which they must reach by crossing a bridge made of 2 narrow beams. Players are not allowed to crawl as the bridge is electrified. Wealthy spectators watch as the whole event is presented as a reality show where they can place bets. People are scared, but Kaiji encourages the guys, reminding them how they used to walk on logs as kids. He advises them to mark their shoes to help keep them on the right course and encourages the players. Tonegawa and Endo observe the events from the guest seats. The group slowly begins to make their way across the beams, but soon lightning strikes nearby and a hurricane appears on the horizon. The players start to get nervous, causing one of them to slip and fall to their death. The remaining players' morale plummets, and more people begin to fall, worsened by the start of rain. Eventually, only Ishido, Kaiji, and Sahara remain on the beams. Ishido decides to give his check to Kaiji, asking him to cash it and send the money to his daughter. Despite Kaiji's pleas, the man lets go and falls silently, freeing his friend from panic. The remaining two slowly reach the building, celebrating their victory. But when Sahara opens a window, the difference in air pressure creates a gust of wind that blows him off the ledge. Kaiji manages to hold onto a ledge and becomes the first person to ever win this tournament. Hyodo, impressed by the show, congratulates Kaiji and grants Tonegawa citizenship in his future kingdom. Once Kaiji recovers, he demands that they cash both checks, but it turns out Ishido's check is void because he died, and the 10 million yen Kaiji won will simply be used to pay off his debt. So all that he has left is about 7,000 yen. Kaiji flies into a rage, furious that he won't be able to send money to Ishido's daughter. He accuses the rich of being heartless, unworthy of the lives sacrificed for their entertainment. Hyodo, impressed by his words, gives Kaiji one last chance and offers him the opportunity to play one more card game against Tonegawa. Kaiji is escorted to the gambling hall, where the rules of the game are explained. Each player receives 10 cards. The main card is the Emperor. His subordinates are citizens who have slaves. The participants place their cards face down. Then they reveal and compare. A citizen versus a citizen is a tie. A citizen beats a slave, but the slave beats the Emperor. Cards cannot be played randomly. You must look and think before making a move. Not only the guests watch the game, but also the prisoners deep underground. At first, Kaiji plays with his remaining winnings, but quickly loses them due to his inexperience. Tonegawa laughs at him, saying that Kaiji's desire to win made his thoughts easy to read from his expressions. Hyodo, disappointed that it ended so quickly, loans Kaiji some money so he can play again. Now Kaiji takes the game more seriously, noticing Tonegawa's strange behavior. Every time Kaiji is about to make a move, Tonegawa looks at his watch. But even this time, Kaiji quickly loses and is sentenced to 130 years of slavery. As Kaiji is led to the underground prison, he replays all the details of the game in his mind, trying to figure out how Tonegawa cheated. Then Endo stops him to call him a loser once again and points to his eternal mark of slavery. At that moment, Kaiji realizes that the microchip in his hand is the key. Tonegawa wore a watch that allowed him to read Kaiji's vital signs, which is how he knew when Kaiji was about to play an important card. Kaiji explains his plan to Endo, telling her how he will beat Tonegawa. He persuades her to loan him 50 million yen, confident that she's a good person. Endo agrees and lends him the money. Tonegawa can't believe it, and Hyodo notes that since she loaned him the money, now her life is also on the line. However, before the game begins, Kaiji smashes his head against a mirror, causing his vital signs to spike in response to the pain. Sitting down to play, he briefly lowers his hand with the cards under the table. Tonegawa grows nervous, feeling uncertain because he can no longer rely on his watch. Meanwhile, Kaiji starts insulting him and splattering the table and cards with drops of his blood. The game starts. As time passes, the game becomes very tense. Tonegawa carefully calculates each move, growing angrier at Kaiji. When only 2 cards are left on the table, Tonegawa notices a bloody mark on one of the cards and remembers the incident on the ship. He realizes that Kaiji is trying to fool him and engages all his analytical abilities. It's the penultimate move. Tonegawa is about to play a card but suddenly stops, remembering that Kaiji had lowered his hand under the table, probably switching cards just like he did on the ship. Endo also thinks Kaiji made a mistake. Tonegawa plays his card and laughs, thinking he's won, but Kaiji reveals his card and wins. The slaves in the underground cheer, while Tonegawa flies into a rage as Kaiji explains that he didn't switch the cards. He knew that his opponent couldn't ignore the blood, so Tonegawa outsmarted himself. Enraged by his servant's huge loss, Kyoto revokes Tonegawa's citizenship in the future kingdom and sends him to work underground for the rest of his life. Kaiji wins 50 million yen. The next day, during lunch at a cafe, Kaiji returns the money to Endo, but suddenly loses consciousness. When he comes to, all the bags of money are gone, and in his pocket, he finds a letter from the girl where she explains that he forgot about the interest that had been accruing every minute. She also reminds him of the damage to her car that he caused before embarking on the cruise, so she simply took what was hers. And now she's leaving, hoping they'll meet again someday. Kaiji is left with only 450,000 yen, which he finally takes to Ishido's daughter. This film, based on a well-known anime, is essentially a ruthless thriller, though it's quite amusing in its execution. It shows the fine line between freedom and dependence on circumstances, betrayal and friendship, treachery and loyalty to one's ideals. It will be interesting to watch both for fans of philosophical Asian films and for those who simply enjoy intricately twisted plots.